Do you talk to yourself? You're crazy if you think you don't. We're going to talk about it on today's podcast. Hi, my name is Michael Johnson. I'm a ballroom dance professional, a life coach, and a peak performance expert. I'm part of a group of motivated people who are dedicated to attaining emotional mastery and unlocking our full potential. We don't believe others are responsible for how we feel. In fact, we don't believe anyone can make us feel anything. We believe in the magic of ballroom dance. It has taught us how to improve our bodies, challenge our minds, and inspire our souls. And in return, I want to share those lessons with the world. We are lifers, and this is Magic for Life. What's up, lifers? Michael Johnson here with the Magic for Life podcast, and I'm so excited you joined me today. I can't wait to talk about this subject. It's just crazy to me that people think that they don't talk to themselves. In fact, there was a whole era and generation of the human race that if you said you talked to yourself, that they'd say you were crazy. I hope that's going away now. I hope when you heard the intro, you thought to yourself, of course I talk to myself. You have self-talk going on all the time. In fact, it's how we operate. You have to engage linguistically within your own mind to be able to function. And the only way you have to do that is through the language that you've learned. I always find it fascinating to talk with people that are bilingual, or even more, because they have such a different approach, because obviously they have different ways to communicate with themselves. So I oftentimes, one of the first things I ask somebody that knows another language and can speak fluently in both is, which language do you think in? And they look at me and they kind of don't know at times, but then I ask them, well, what language do you primarily think in? And then they go through and talk to me about which one it is. Now, for those people that use two different languages every day and constantly, like I have a few clients that are that have families that speak Spanish and English in the home. So it's not just little or only one and then some of the other. And my family was like that in a way. I wish I would have learned the other language well enough to be fluent at it, but I didn't during my day. But someday we'll get that back on the list, right? But I always find it fascinating to understand and listen to how people think in their head. Now, that's not really what I want to talk with you about today, other than the idea that you do think and you communicate with yourself inside of your mind. You use your language, the one that is the dominant language for you, and or maybe if you're that fluent, you use multiple. But the thing is that part of the way we communicate to ourselves is we have two primary questions. Now, if you've hung out with me or listened to my stuff, you might have heard this on, and I talk about it a bunch. You have two primary questions. What does this mean? What am I going to do about it? And it's easy. They go on all the time. They're autonomic, which basically means that they're happening nonstop. What does this mean? What am I going to do about it? And the thing is that you do it so quickly that sometimes you don't even know you're asking it. And so I'll give you a quick example. If I tell you to blink right now, you go, well, why should I blink? And then I say, well, don't blink. And you go, well, why shouldn't I blink? And then I say, I want you to think about your blinking. And all of a sudden we've interrupted that pattern and we've gotten in the way of this autonomic function, this thing you do automatically. And because we've gotten in the way of it, you may still be thinking about, should I be blinking or not be blinking? I didn't give you any reasoning behind one way or the other, but now it feels strange because are you doing it on purpose or are you doing it because your eyes need to blink for a reason? So you can get in the way of your autonomic functions, and you can do that with every function. Some people are well versed and they spend a lifetime learning how to control something in their body that is autonomic. The thing I wanted to talk about today wasn't even the primary questions. It's about how you communicate to yourself, and that primary question induces meaning. So when you say, what does this mean? You're sort of developing how you're going to feel about it thus forward. Now, we have all these pre-run programs, these ideas that we create along the way. Some of it we were trained for, some of it we made up. And basically, they're stories. So you tell yourself stories. So you say, what does that mean? And you might have a story attached to it. Or if you don't, you might be creating a story around it. It might be a story in progress. And these stories that you tell yourself on a regular basis are kind of how you shortcut the meanings that you give to things. Now, the lovely part about it is that we're all telling stories in our mind. Some people are really great at telling stories with their voices, and some people are really great at telling stories with their minds, and you never hear about those stories. But the things that they're saying and the things that they're coming up with in their head are the stories that they tell. Now, the thing about a story is that it can be true, and it can also not be true. Now, for us, it's as true as our reality, as our perspective. I am not a big fan of the word reality, but as our perspective in the world, the story is as true as we give it energy. And so sometimes we see somebody or something, and we give it meaning, and then we start telling a story all about it in our own mind. We might not ever get that story outside of our mind, but we tell that story all the time. Now, those stories will influence your world. So you might hang out with that person that is constantly telling a story. They're constantly saying, how they got started in this thing or in that thing, or they're continually telling a story. And that's how they communicate to other people, is through their stories. And some people don't tell any story, and they are quiet and reserved, but that doesn't mean that there aren't stories going on in their head. And so you might ask them, somebody that's super reserved and maybe what others would call shy, and you say, what kind of story led to you being shy? Like, what story are you telling yourself that keeps you from being an extrovert instead of an introvert? Now, mind you, I'm not telling you that one of these is good or one of these is bad. So let's try our best not to put a judgment on what good or bad is. We can never get inside somebody's head and change how they feel about something. Only they can do it. Only they are capable of doing that. That means only you are capable of doing that. Only you can go in and change your stories or change the meaning that your stories have. So, there's lots of examples of it, but I thought I'd share with you just a little bit of my background story, just a little. You might have heard this already, so I apologize if it's a repeat for you. But when I've always been a dancer. I started when I was 5, and one of the things that got me into dance was my mother. She wanted to take a dance class, and so she took me along with her. But it wasn't my thing. It wasn't what I did. But I was only 5, 6 years old. I was young. And because she was in a classroom with a bunch of college students also learning, the college kids thought I was cute, so they'd come over and they'd teach me a step here or there, and they'd make me learn this or that. By the time I was 10 years old, I knew the dances. I was able to dance. I was capable of leading a lady to do a figure and to do most dances, and it was clear that I had some aptitude for it, but I hadn't really committed. In fact, I really truly believed I was a basketball player, and that's another story for another time. But the idea there was that I just kept dancing in the background, and it was kind of a thing that just was fueled by my mother wanting to go and learn to dance herself. And through the years, I just kept dancing and doing more of it and doing more of it. And eventually I went on to get a partner that I danced with, and we competed a little bit. I was a swing dancer in terms of there are multiple worlds in the ballroom world, if you don't know about that. There's a swing world, there's what we call the ballroom world, which is a little different than swing. There's country western that has kind of their own world of dancers. And so in each of these different genres, competing and dancing takes on its own form. Well, I competed in the swing world of dancers and had some success there, won a couple championships. And at that point, I still hadn't quite committed that was what I was going to do. But I do remember along the way during my teenage years attending an event. And this event was a dance camp. And at the end of the dance camp, we all got to watch the pros that were teaching us put on a show. And it was sort of, our turn to see them in their finest, in action and doing what it was that they do. So all the best pros that were at this camp put on this great show at the end, and all of us younger kids would go, and it was a fancy dinner and tables were set, but all of the kids would go sit in the front row because we wanted great seats to see these people that we thought were amazing, right? And we looked at them and we were like, wow, these dancers, they're competing as professionals, and they've really achieved the highest in their skill. So we'd all, as kids, go in just like kids do, and we'd sit up in the front row and watch these people dance. And I remember sitting there on the floor just as a young kid watching these numbers come out one at a time. And then one of the numbers, it wasn't the final one of the numbers was the guys in the show got together, and I guess they decided they wanted to do a little guy solo thing. So they did a little mambo side-by-side fun piece. And if you know about dance, it's kind of fun to see the guys be able to get up and dance side-by-side and show off their dance skills. And they got up on the floor. I was watching this, and I just overwhelmingly, their energy and their excitement and their love for what they were doing just sort of poured over me. And I remember thinking to myself, I am going to do that. Now, at the time, I was still playing basketball. I was really pretty decent, and so I had a shot at being a good high-level athlete if I would have maybe put some focus there. But I just remember at that moment thinking, holy cow, I'm going to do that. They inspired me so much. And over the course of many years after that, I went on to get a scholarship to dance in college and to do a pro career and dance professionally for quite a while. We had some great successes along the way, and honestly, it wasn't until years later I got hired to dance at this same camp. Now, at the time, I didn't really think much of it. It seemed like the natural progression, Yeah, I've been dancing as a pro, of course. Well, it's nice. They hired me. I'm going to go teach. And we get to the camp, and they ask, hey, would you, obviously at the end of this camp, we're going to do a show for the people there, and, can you put together something? But during the week of teaching, it was sort of surreal because there were a couple of teachers there that were teaching when I was taking the camp. And I kind of looked at it, and at this stage I had kind of entered the back end of my career. I was getting close to retirement from competing, at least. And I just remember being so excited and looking around and having that realization that, holy cow, I'm here teaching with these people that were teaching me. And for a couple of them, they were so kind and gracious because they were so welcoming and warm about, hey, that was really cool. That's really neat that you've now arrived and you're teaching here with us. And it was really cool, the camaraderie that they showed. But during the week, they were like, hey, let's do a mambo side-by-side thing again. And all of a sudden it hit me, and I remembered sitting there on the floor going, I'm going to do that. And I was so inspired and so excited to be able to get out on the floor with these gentlemen that literally at least 2 or 3 of them were in the show that I watched and that were there inspiring me to go on and continue to dance. And I really believe that, there were a lot of things that went along with what was going on in dance for me that really helped. send me down that path. But that one moment when I saw them dance and I was just the kid on the floor being inspired, it really changed my world. It changed my life, and it really set in motion this idea that I was going to do that. And I was going to accomplish that thing. And then next thing you know, here I was learning this side-by-side routine. And it was a new routine. It was just something we put together during that week. But it was kind of a full circle of how we can inspire, and the things that we do sometimes affect people in such a profound way that, it actually catapulted me into a whole career of dance. And I just think that is so cool. Now, I tell you that not just to tell you my story, and hopefully there are a few other messages that maybe you heard in there along the way, but I tell you that because that was the story. That was something, it was a maybe 20-year long story of events and how it had influenced my life in dance. But I tell you that because in my version of that story, you could see why I would have gone on to dance professionally. I had this great inspiration, and I was bound and determined that I was going to accomplish that thing. And all the things that came along with it sort of presented themselves as I continued to move towards that idea. So I want you to think about your stories, because although I'm telling you a positive version of my story and that took me down the path of dance, there are so many stories that we tell ourselves, and some of them are detrimental to our health and our well-being. Some of them are the thing that actually push you and make you strive for something greater. And so you have to kind of look at your stories. And what I encourage you to do is not just look at the stories that you're telling that are good and positive, but maybe catch yourself on some of the stories that you're telling yourself that have a negative impact. And maybe you can go back and start to look at them again and give them some new meaning so that you can free yourself from the chains of a story you've been telling for years and years. And that, honestly, is what I wanted to talk to you about today, is just finding some of those stories. Even if you just found one of the stories you're telling yourself about why you can't do something, or about why you are not something, or why you're not enough, and maybe retell the story. Maybe it will be as easy as you just stopping thinking about it and giving it a new perspective, and maybe looking at it with your adult eyes, or with the eyes of wisdom and hindsight. And maybe retell that story that is affecting you in a poor way, so that you can move on and do something positive with it. Because if there is some negative story that is hurting you and hurting your productivity or ability to become a better person, then what if you could go back, tell that story again, with hindsight, with new eyes, with new perspective that maybe you didn't have throughout the story, and give it some new meaning, so that you can utilize that story for something positive instead of something negative. I encourage you to go do that today. Take a look at some of the stories, catch yourself, interrupt the pattern, and get involved with your stories. Don't let them just play autonomically and be something that is out of your control. So go and start to listen to some of your stories. Once again, I'm so grateful that you showed up today and you're listening. I hope this message is helpful for you. And if it is, maybe there's somebody else out there that it'd be helpful for. So please share the podcast, take a picture of the screen, post it on Facebook, Instagram, wherever you use social media. And we'd appreciate passing it on and letting other people know if this was something that helped you. Maybe it'll be something that helps somebody else, and that would be great. Hope you're having a great day. Go listen to some of your stories. Catch yourself. Good luck. We'll see you next time.
Are you loving Magic for Life? Please like and share our podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Want more magic for your life? Join me for some great Facebook Lives on the official Facebook page at Michael A. Johnson Official.